As a voice actor and narrator, a lot of my work is in online training presentations, and often the client will ask that I break up my long narration into small individual files so that they can put each one on a separate slide for a PowerPoint presentation. Now, you could have 20, 50, 100 or more slides, so you got to name each one something separate, like M5, T15, S1, 2, 3, and so on. So the challenge is, how do you break up one big narration file into a whole bunch of small files and name them something separate, but do it easily and quickly? Now, besides being a voice actor and narrator, my other job is as a corporate filmmaker, and I get to work with a lot of different production and post-production tools for that. And I actually came up with a pretty nifty way to break up my narration using video editing software. And the best part is, it allows me to easily make changes after the final product's been delivered, because as we all know, the final product is never the final product. So let me show you the technique that I use to break up my narration into smaller files using video editing software. Here we are in my audio editing tool of choice, Soundtrack Pro. As you can see, I've got my narration broken up into 5 separate sections, and the client is requesting that each of them be saved as a separate audio file so they can go into separate slides of the presentation. Now, the way you would normally do this, or you'd think to do it, would be to do all your audio editing like I've done here, and then select each region and export it. So I might select that region and type in Jerry website. That's the client we're saying here. Jerry website 1, and I would save it. And then I would move on to the next one and call it Jerry website 2, Jerry website 3, 4, and 5. Now that technique does work, but there are a couple of issues. The biggest one is changes. If I need to make changes down the road, for example, if the client says they don't want the files as MP3s anymore, they want them as AIFs, or they would like the audio level changed because they're a little louder than another training program they've already got, or they want the EQ settings changed, or who knows what. If you have to go back and do all that work again, all that select and export, and so on, that's a pain, especially if you've got 100 or more of these things. That's going to take a lot of time. What I wanted was an easy automated way to get all this done, so if there were any changes down the road, it would go really quick, because you know there's going to be changes. So here's what I came up with. What I do is I will export this entire timeline as one audio file. Now I'm going to call this Jerry website V1. And as you can see down here, I'm saving it as an AIF file, 16-bit 48K. It's basically an uncompressed audio file that I can convert into other things, which is what I'm going to do. And I click Export. It zooms through. And I am done here. I am now going to bop over to my video editing software. I'm using Final Cut Pro. Here we are. Now, if you're not used to video editing software, what I've got here is I've got my timeline, which is where I can bring all my assets, my video, my audio, graphics, all that stuff. But in this case, the only thing I need to bring over is my audio file. And then here's my library, which shows all the assets that I can use in my project. Right now, I don't have anything. All I have is a sequence, which is this thing over here. And what I'm going to do is make a bunch of different sequences for each audio file that I need to save. Now, the first thing I need to do is bring in the audio file that I just made, which is Jerry website V1. Now, I'm going to drag this over to the timeline of sequence 1. Now you can see I've got sequence 1 here, and here is my audio file with my 5 tracks. Now, what I need to do here is set an in and an out point. I basically need to tell it where to start and where to stop, which is what you would normally do in the audio program, but I'm going to do it here. So let's go over here and find the start. I backed up a little bit, and I give myself a little bit of a space here so I don't start talking right away, right at the start of the clip. I usually give myself about 10 video frames worth of space there, and then I will jump to the end, and right about there is my out point. Now, before I go any further, when I save these files out, it's going to name them based on the name of the sequence, which right now is sequence 1, and I want to change that. So I'm going to click on here, and in Final Cut Pro, you can just double click to change the name right here. So I'm going to make it Jerry Website 01. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select Jerry Website 0, and I'm going to copy that into my clipboard, Control-C. What that's going to allow me to do is easily rename these things as I move along. And I hit Enter. So now I have a sequence called Jerry Website 1, and the in and out point are set for this first clip. Next step is I take this sequence and I duplicate it. So I'm going to change the in and out points on this sequence, but first what I want to do is change the name. Now there's a keyboard shortcut on here. If you have the name highlighted like it is right here, you can simply hit the Enter key by the number pad, and it will highlight the entire name right there. And because I've already copied Jerry Website 0 in, I can hit Control-V and type the number 2, and I'm ready to go. The other keyboard shortcut in Final Cut Pro is if I hit the Return key twice, it will open up Jerry Website 2 over here. So now this sequence is open up. Now these are all important. The keyboard shortcuts are important because I need to move fast. If I got to do 50 or 100 of these things, I have to streamline the process any way I can. So if I can get something done in 2 seconds versus 5 seconds, well, I'm going to save 3 seconds times however many files I got to do. So now that I have Jerry Website 2, I'm going to set my in and out point here.
Here in the home.
There's my in point, and there's my out point. And now I'm going to do the same for these 3 tracks. And again, as far as speed goes, I'll just go through these and you can see how quickly I can go after doing about, I don't know, a few thousand of these over the years.
The gear sound booth. Now, my block, what I do.
And here's the last
Thanks
one.
for.
There you go. So just that quick, I've got 5 separate sequences for each of the 5 audio files that I need. Now I can save this project, and now the last thing I need to do is save all these as separate files. And this is where the speed comes in. I select all of them, and in this case my client has asked me for a WAV file of a particular format. So in Final Cut Pro, I select all these and control click it, and I go down to Batch Export. So here are all my sequences. I select them all, and I'm going to pick the settings that I want. So where do I want to save them? I am going to pick this masters folder that I've created. The format is going to be WAV. The default settings that this client wants are this 44 1 kilohertz 16-bit mono. I always go into options and click best because why not? Naming options. With the Mac, I have to add the file type extension because for some reason when it saves them, normally it doesn't include it, and then when the client gets it, they don't see it, so I add that. And I definitely want to use the item in and out point because I went through and set all those, otherwise it will just save the whole file, which I don't really want. So item in and out, I hit OK, and I hit export, and done. Yes, it was that quick. Now if I go into my Finder, in this masters folder, here is each of the files. And if I play one of them,
Here in the home page.
each one has just the track that I need, and they're all named properly. Now here's the best part. So let's say the client asks me to lower the volume. They're just too loud. How can I do that? Well, I can easily do that over in Soundtrack Pro, except how can I save each one of those files? Actually, very easily. I'm going to close this project. Yes, I want to save it. And I will come back over here. And let's say they request that the volume be lowered by, I don't know, 4, 5 dB. Who cares? It doesn't matter. So now the volume is a little bit lower. I will export this. Now here's my original file that I made, and I'm going to save it right over the top. So hit export. Do I want to replace it? Yes, I do. It saves that file. I go back into Final Cut. I can actually open that project. And here is the file.
The gear page.
But this file is actually the new one that I saved with the lower volume level. To save all these new files, I still have all the sequences over here. And they're still all set with the in points and out points. They're just using the new audio file that I made. So to make all new MP3s or waves, I simply select them all, I go to batch export, and I go through the process like I did before, which goes pretty quickly. I hit save, and I'm good to go. Using the video editing software in this way allows me to make changes really easily. So that's the technique I use with Soundtrack Pro and Final Cut Pro. This technique could be used with anything. You could use it with any audio editing program, and as long as the video editing program you're using supports multiple sequences like this, the technique should apply just as well.